Greetings, everyone. So glad you could join us today. This is Norman Ball speaking with Medicus Global, and today we are going to be talking about our international expansion program. And Stephen, if you'd slip up that first slide for me, please. I see it down below. Or am I going to be able to see it at all, actually, come to think of it?
Let's see, I think everyone will be able to see it. Ron, if you can help us out with this too while we're going the first time doing this, is everyone live? Maybe in the chat room, everyone that's on this call, can you see the slides that are available right now live? Let's just see what the feedback is. It'd be somebody other than a presenter or actual people looking. Can you see the first slide, your international expansion is Medicus Global's future?
I have another solution if I need it, Stephen, just as we're going along here. Just give that a few seconds to let us know in the meanwhile.
Okay, can you see that now, Norman?
Yes, I sure can. Thank you.
Fantastic, we got it fixed. Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, solution found. So just to get back on the rails here again, our international expansion program. This is one of the most exciting things that I can tell you that I personally have been involved in my entire career. The idea of being at the front edge for all of us of a company that's about to reach out globally and encompass the entire world with the product that we have, and a product that we're the best at, and the product that we are the experts globally on, and with Stephen Rossiter, the president of our company, being, I think, the leading authority in telemedicine in the world today. He spent the last 10 years, as a matter of fact, developing this concept throughout the United States, bringing on hundreds of thousands, even up into the over 1 million customers and users of this product in the U.S., and then began the international expansion side. So I want to welcome you to our very first international report from Medicus Global. So we're going to start here with you know, I mean, what does this mean to Medicus Global itself? I mean, when you really think about that, this is going to feed the power of our relationship marketing division more than any other single factor that I can personally think of. Diversifying globally is also going to protect us. Now, we have a company that's growing and developing, and we're just past our first year in business as a relationship marketing company, taking this, telemedicine out throughout the United States and across the world. So we're diversifying globally, and it's going to be a protective process for the other side of our company, for the marketing side of our company. So it gives us that confidence that we're going to be able to go forward regardless what we experience along the way, and become a large force. And then the relationship marketing side of our company will then feed into the international expansion. It's going to be a fantastic symbiotic relationship. It will also feed our wellness division. When you think about that, once everything that we're doing with telemedicine really reaches that massive stage that it will in the very near future, then we fold our wellness division that I think everybody's quite excited about into that process, spreading good health around the world. What a nice feel that has. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate that. Stephen's running the controls for me, and I'm making the noises. So, and I just want to take this opportunity now to turn the mic over to Stephen. And of course, as you know, I mean, I'm sure everybody in this room today is well aware who Stephen Rossiter is. I am very proud to be associated with this man and his team, and I've been down to Florida to meet with the team, and I am telling you, we've got the right people in the right place at the right time. And as far as Medicus Global in our international expansion state is concerned, there's nobody that is more qualified to bring that to our table than Stephen Rossiter. Stephen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Norman. I appreciate it. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, as you know, we've over the past few months, you've heard a lot more of the voice of Mr. Norman Ball, who's very experienced in this field. And I want to just give a little bit of information on why that is. One, we do have, Norman is heavily still involved in the event processing and planning on behalf of Medicus Global Corporate. I mean, his expertise just in events, et cetera, are phenomenal. But Norman has also taken on an incredible role and that is with the international expansion. He's been a massive help here to corporate. He's been a liaison, an ambassador, a consultant, every title you can possibly think of, he's been involved with over the past, almost 6-8 months now, working with us. And some of the people on this call or listening to this call, you have heard some of the calls we had. But with Norman and what he's been doing, he's leading the side of this with Medicus Global on the international expansion. It's such a huge project. And Norman, I just want to say thank you very much for that. And for everyone here on this call, I just want you to know, what he's doing, so we know exactly that he's a part of corporate and working 100% with that. So thanks, Norman, for that.
Thank you, Stephen, very much. Appreciate it.
So right now, we're going to keep this call as we've been doing this week, and I know we've had quite a few events this week, but we kind of wanted to break things up this week and just kind of put things off to let people go to what it is that they're looking for. And this one is specifically for the international expansion side of Medicus Global. The international expansion would probably take roughly about 60 hours nonstop to be able to talk about absolutely everything that we have going on. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time, but in the next 25 to 30 minutes, I do want to get a nice overlay of kind of the idea of how big this is on what we're talking about. Because when we're speaking about countries in such an easy way, and saying, oh, we're doing global expansion and we're going into many other countries, that sounds very, very easy, but yet there's a lot entailed with that, just the relationship, just understanding cultures, understanding language barriers, understanding different policies and procedures, understanding treaties and agreements and trades. There's so many aspects to this before you can ever even set foot into another country. There's also rules and regulations for those countries, what business licenses you need to have, and a lot of legality stuff that goes on to that. So I'm kind of just hitting a few points of this on how much work it takes before you ever can set foot inside another country to start what we call an implementation process. Now, there are several countries that these beginning stages have already happened. We've already made it through those hurdles. We've already made it through that. Some we are still in the process of that. Some we are beginning the process of that. And then other countries, we're planning on the beginning dates of those processes. But right now, when you look on your screens, our status as of today in these countries you see on the screen right now, we always start off with Poland because Poland was one of the first ones. I mean, I'll be honest, when we started this venture, one of the things that I can say that I really feel confident and I understand completely on the process and how it works, and that is the concept of telemedicine. What telemedicine is, how far telemedicine can go, and what telemedicine can do for the average person, regardless of what country or regardless of what their lifestyle is like. Telemedicine is the way of the future, and that future has already started. So it is the present way of technology that is only building as we move. So when we look at a Poland-like country, like a country like Poland, that has a population of about 40 million people under the public healthcare system, that's a little bit, even though it's a lot of people, it's a much more manageable type of country to start an implementation data process, which we have programs going there now that we are pulling this information. And we get a lot of questions here at corporate sometimes, well, why does it take so long? Well, one of the reasons for that is the amount of time it takes to get data. I mean, just looking the last year on developing Medicus Global as a relationship marketing side and what we've done in the U.S. over the last year, okay? We've been actually working with Poland longer than that. And to put something in that's never been done, okay, where in the U.S. telemedicine has been around for about 10 years, whereas in Poland it has not. It's a brand new process, and thanks to us, we're introducing that into that culture and into that group. So we have to allow time to collect the data. We can't go in and think everyone's going to get sick on the same day, so we have to give a course of several months to have people utilize the service, see what fits better, see the connections of the pharmacies, the do's and don'ts, and add changes in software and make everything specific, not to mention everything has to be in Polish as well. So, but the status of Poland right now is going very, very well. Everything's been very positive. I will be planning another trip there. Then my next trip to Poland will be a part of the process of actual implementation on a larger scale. We have a lot of conversations going on in Jamaica right now, a lot of discussions. We do have some meetings that are being finalized right now, to where we will be meeting with the powers that be, Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, etc. There's a lot of people that were involved with that, one of them being Brenda Fogel, who was a big part of making those possibilities happen, but also one of her team members, which was Lionel Hines, which Lionel was a massive part of creating the contacts with that as well. And I just want to say thank you to those two, because I do think one of them is on this call today, maybe two of them. But Jamaica was formed, and the possibilities and the contacts were created by our own Medicus Global family, which means people that are on this call right now. So it goes to show you that it's not just corporate that's behind all this. We're all kind of doing this together, and that's what's nice about the international side. It is growing very, very quickly because we have so many more people involved with this process. One of the things on the next country, look at Indonesia. I mean, that's a pretty big country. You're looking at somewhere around 250 million lives that I think that country holds, and I can't even tell you how many islands that Indonesia is made up of, but the geographical side, demographics, carrier service, there's a lot of things that fall in play with that. But David Bobner, who was somebody that Mr. Norman Ball brought into the picture, is absolutely knows everything about it. Not only does he know everything about it, his family, he has family that lives in Indonesia that are doctors who are connected with the governments and everything there. So it's been quite a nice process and great conversations. And we've been discussing those and working on the plans and speaking with Indonesia. And I'm sure there's a trip planned here pretty soon for that as we go into the implementation process. But Indonesia is looking very, very well. And we've just received on the next country here, Belize. That's another one that's right on the edge. It's hard to say, which one is going to be full-fledged first, because they're all so excited about doing it. We're just going through the processes. And Belize is a lot smaller country, which we've developed contacts, but also on the government side, we've already had conversations with government officials, and meetings are being arranged over the next 14 days to start doing things in Belize as well. Canada is always one of the main ones that we're looking at. I know we have several associates, including Mr. Norman Ball. I know that Ron Greenhoff, even, who handles our webinar jams and helps us so much behind the scenes, is in Canada as well. So Canada is a big part of the side of this, and we are going through that process now of the licensing and knowing what all to do. It's also a very expensive process. Every country that you look at, there's a tremendous amount of money that's spent, more than we can all understand, because, again, we have to take off one hat, which is the marketing side, and look at what it means for international expansion. Okay, what we're talking about when it's an entire country pulled on board with that. Okay, as well as the Philippines, massive headways done in Puerto Rico, which I know we have a relationship from the U.S. to Puerto Rico, but still they are on their own system there. We have, I believe David Callahan, Nick Apostle, those two are big parts of making that work. Also members of our Medicus Global family. And then another 80 countries on our map that we already have, laid out over the next few years as we start doing it. There's no way possible to hit the whole globe at one time. However, the processes are far advanced. We're way ahead of schedule on things. We are way ahead of the game on this. And that's because it's so new, and a lot of countries are looking for solutions, if you should say. And solutions are key to the issues that's going on in the market today. So our plans for tomorrow, the next countries on the list for those, which there are other ones, but some key main ones that I just want to introduce first. And as we do these calls more and more, and as we talk more about international expansion, we'll start breaking these countries up and really getting into things of the business side and what we are doing on our end and what we have done, so that people can learn and familiarize themselves. And when you're speaking to people about this, you're giving accurate information on behalf of corporate, talking about what we're doing here with Medicus Global. So the plans for tomorrow, if you look at the countries here, Germany, which I was just able to visit here recently, United Kingdom, I know we have some of our own associates there. We have a lot of contacts that just came into play over the last 2 weeks, that a lot of things moving there. Some other members of our corporate team here, our controller, and different people are going over to the UK actually over the next week and a half to start sitting down with the United Kingdom on the telemedicine side of things here. So, as well as Ireland, we have great headway with Ireland. We've been working with, again, some of our own associates who's opened doors and made things happen there, and generating meetings as well as Costa Rica. France, we all know on France, Mr. John Casala and a lot of members there, we were able to get a lot of information and contacts and headway there. What's interesting about Europe, all the European countries, is they kind of all fit together on the processes. So what's nice as we fine-tune this, we're able to duplicate that process to a lot of the countries in Europe. Okay, so India, another country as well that's on the radar, Cayman Islands, which is another one, as well as Australia. We have a lot of associates with Medicus Global in Australia, and a lot of information has been created through that, and we are making headway there. There's already been other organizations that tried similar type of things in telemedicine, but the business model was not there, and that's something that I'm very familiar with on what works, and it's important to understand cultures and streamlines and how things work and what technology is. It'll be interesting on, one of the calls we'll show the map of the world on internet technology. It's pretty interesting to see, and you can actually Google this and look at information on this, but what the different internet speeds are around the country, you would be surprised to know that the United States is not very high up there on internet technology. There are some countries that are far more advanced on the internet technology. For instance, Poland is rated the #1 country with the fastest internet when it comes to smartphones. They have unbelievable amounts of internet and speed there that everything is almost instant, whether downloading or uploading. So it's pretty incredible to see that and understand it, because that's a big part of us. Technology is so important in what internet and things work, because we are internet based. We are it's a technology done through video conferencing, where that's live time, and several things of that industry where the internet side is so important to what we are doing. So with that being said, we have so much that's going on in the few countries that you see, and that's why the international expansion, we will start a process of where we'll have calls done on a regular basis so that you can see kind of what's going on. We can give updates on the countries that we've already spoke about, that we are currently working through, and the ones that are on the list for tomorrow. That list is growing. I believe it's already started to grow since we've created this presentation. We have so much information coming in. We're just getting everything together and getting all the, like I said at the beginning of this call, with what needs to be done before you can ever set foot in there. And those are things that the average person would not think. It makes sense. Hey, if it works, let's go in and let's do it. When we're looking at an entire country, there is a little bit of a process there, especially legalities and things of that nature. So with that being said, we'll go to the next slide here, and I'll bring Mr. Norman Ball back on to discuss about developing expansion teams.
Thank you, Stephen. Good job. And listen, yeah, it's you're right. It's getting very exciting as we have conversations like this. Knowing where it's going and what's been done to lay the groundwork. It's just tremendous. I think on the idea of developing these teams, I love this idea because training is a big part of my own personal history, and finding those people who have a keen interest in developing either the country they're in or helping us with contacts they have, which is how I got involved with Stephen in this. It was accidental, really. I met somebody where I was working, and I mentioned Medicus Global, and he told me about his family in Indonesia, and bang, suddenly we're on the phone with Stephen and setting up meetings and talking to people in country, the doctors there and stuff, and here we have the potential of 152 million citizens of a country that are really very keen on telemedicine on a national basis. So over the next several years, we're going to, I think probably starting this year sometime, we may actually have our first team of maybe 2 individuals as it's set up now to help us so that we can expand more quickly. Stephen has the process down pat. Stephen is teaching me. I'll be imparting that information to others, and as we find people with the right mindset, the right attitude, and and the right capabilities, we will begin to groom those people to do what I'm about to be groomed to do, which is going to these areas. Stephen Rossiter can't open 100 countries by himself. I think we'd all be hard pressed to handle 2 at a time. But once I'm fully trained, and then my first team is fully trained, then we can go on and double our efforts. So keep this in mind, file this away. Many of you in this call may have some interest in this area, but certainly talk to us. And if you do have contacts of people in other countries that you might that you believe might bring some value to the table, by all means, bring them to us. Let us talk to them. I will probably do the initial interview, and then based on that interview, determine if it's appropriate at that time to arrange an opportunity for Stephen to speak to them on a conference call. And then that's the process. And then we go to dealing with more than one person in country and opening that door, as Stephen described, where we might start with a doctor or two and find out from them what the process is, what's required. We want to learn culturally what is needed. It's very important, this part of it. I'm learning things about other countries that are shocking me, things you should and shouldn't do, and we are going to pay attention to that. So. And each country will eventually need people on the ground as well. Naturally, that in the initial stage will be us on the ground. I think probably our team will go first and set up those first meetings and try to pull from that the key people that we think are the right ones before we put them in front of Stephen Rosser and have him get on an airplane. We'd like to have that groundwork done so that he's sitting down with the right people and not wasting any time. And everybody wants to talk to the top person. And that's the power we have when we're there, is to say, listen, if you want to speak to the top person in this field worldwide, we can get them here, and use his power to get the doors open for us. And as Stephen mentioned, opening the doors of not just doctors, but also other aspects of the medical field, pharmacies and nurses and doctors and hospitals, and then, of course, getting into the financial side, the funding side, which we'll talk about a little later, but and also the business power that we can connect with in these countries. Some people are already bringing us massive, strong leaders, including prime ministers and leaders of countries are bringing them to our table, and so these people on the ground who will manage the future of that particular company. And I mean, there will be initially, early on, I should say, at least, somebody to manage that effort so that we're not always there on ground. We're going to other countries, coming back, and we will be involved in that process for, as much as 5 years. But the initial stage is getting the infrastructure up, getting people on the ground. That would include a manager, that would include eventually an ambassador who would be more of an important individual, a figurehead who would be the ambassador for that country that we would communicate to all the time. So it's a real big deal, and it's something that I think our whole organization of people in Medicus Global should be thinking about. Who do I know? And remember that eventually we will have our relationship marketing available in those countries, which Stephen is going to speak about shortly. But so we want to be thinking ahead for ourselves and our organizations as well. So, Stephen, I'm just going to turn it back over to you to just sort of take the next step, if I may, and we'll go on from there. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Norman, for all those updates. And as we look at the next slide, ladies and gentlemen, pursuing relationship marketing in each new country, there are a few steps to that, and I'm going to briefly just speak about this and save the in-depth part of this for another call really on its own if you're interested in learning more about this. But there's two different types of ways that we are looking at each individual country, and that's countries with socialized medicine systems and countries with U.S.-type health systems. Okay, so predominantly most countries do have a socialized medicine type structure. And one of the things that works with this is we are building the telemedicine infrastructure to be used on a socialized medicine side, that telemedicine could and should be available to every single person in the healthcare side. It's structured a little bit differently. The VIP type setting is saved on the marketing side of this, but where people would have access to telemedicine based on each individual life. These would not be family plans. These would be, telemedicine availability where, the wait time for physicians would be a little bit longer. But if we notice on a lot of countries, 6 to 8 weeks, if somebody waited, a few hours to speak to a doctor, that's a huge difference and a massive difference to what they're currently doing. And at the same time, we would be saving money to the government and also promoting wellness and giving access to physicians in a timely manner, which is where things should be. Once these are put in place, well, then the marketing side can come into place where we start generating, relationship type marketing inside these countries through Medicus Global's matrix and through our associates, to where we provide a faster service. We provide the family plans, and now it's also any of the countries that we currently have telemedicine in. If you travel to those countries, the idea is to have that availability as well, and so you have a traveling side to it for just a small fee of, for instance, the $29.95 per month. Your whole family's covered. You have instant access, and you basically have a concierge type service and a VIP service inside the telemedicine. So that's kind of the different looks of what we're going into a country with socialized medicine. We're looking to supply telemedicine to the socialized medicine network, and then move in right after that with the marketing plan, which is pretty short right after that. It's almost the same timing with that, where people, that want to purchase something that covers their whole family, they can, or cover when they travel, to have a faster service, to have more benefits with that. But just the basic telemedicine side of that, we're working. That's what we're working with the countries for. It's a much smoother process with that, and it gets people talking about telemedicine everywhere. So each location will eventually need people on the ground to manage the future of that particular country, and we are building those, and we have such an incredible network of contacts now that we are just continuing to build that, and for everyone to know that we will always, for the history of Medicus Global, be looking for more and more contacts. I mean, it's a small world, but it's a big world when it comes to these kind of things, and there's a lot of area to cover, a lot of meetings to happen, and the more people that understand what we're doing and going through and understanding the concept, the more people that come on board and return when these things start being implemented. The positive response on that and the excitement just continues to grow. So, I mean, that's a basic overlay of that. And the countries with the U.S. type of health systems are very similar to what we're doing here in the U.S. I mean, the marketing side is there, the cost savings there, the need to get to physicians are there. We don't work with insurance companies in no way, shape, or form. This is purely a service. This is purely, an added benefit to anyone having instant access to physicians, as we know that those of us who have used the service ourselves, and many testimonials we've received that, in less than 30 minutes you access a physician to handle non-emergency needs. And with the U.S. statistic of 70% of doctor's visits are unnecessary, actually in some other country that statistic is even larger. In some cases, all the way up to 80% of doctor visits are unnecessary and can be treated through telemedicine. So I don't, it's really not a question of if this will happen. I mean, it's definitely when everything comes into place, because there's the needs there, the operation side of this is there, the implementation side is there, the want from your average person is there, and every aspect that we can look at that, are we hitting all points of this is, there's a check mark there. So the ability to put this in, it makes sense on all different levels, and as an entire country, it improves the wellness, and over the course of time, I mean, the data we're able to generate of that wellness and different statistics we're able to see on that are going to be astronomical to the development of those wellness programs inside those countries. I mean, it's very sad to really say, or even to see what are some of the issues that's going on in other countries that we may take for granted and not even think about in our own areas. With the poor areas where some people don't even have power, with how far some rural areas or some areas of people who are within 2 hours of being able to go make it to a doctor. I mean, the things they go through before they actually make that trip, sometimes, and more times than not, that situation turns into a more serious situation. In return, it's hospitalizing people, and on the socialized medicine, those become very, very expensive, when that could have been prevented by a simple telemedicine consultation through Medicus Global, and the antibiotics and whatever's needed are given to that person through a carrier service or through a pharmacy or whatever is set up for that particular area, to where people are getting better faster, and they're not, and it's just becoming a healthier life for everyone. And that's one of the passions and visions behind what we're doing here with the international expansion, is to duplicate this process, but yet cater it and brand it to each particular country and each culture. We also find that there are a lot of countries, when we look different than places like Canada and places like America and UK, there's places around the world, ladies and gentlemen, that, even in the same country, different areas are totally different. Different processes in individual areas inside the same country. So there are a lot of parts of this when it comes to the development side of this. Okay, so it's very important to understand that. And if you are interested, international expansion is such a big part of the future of Medicus Global as well. I mean, it benefits everyone around the world, not only on a business side, but also it impacts a lot of people's lives. It helps a lot of people as well. And that's one of the main things we are looking for to be able to to go through that. So looking at slide 7 now, when we're looking at establishing and funding telemedicine, this is just a brief overview of some of the phases there. So phase 1, basically developing in-country contacts, something that we have spoke about and going through and developing that groundwork before an in-person visit is ever created. Okay, phase 2 is expanding those initial contacts. We have the main ones there in a lot of countries, such as I've discussed on this call. But then those contacts are expanding even more to where we start doing live calls, we start doing conference calls, we start explaining what telemedicine is, how it benefits, learning the culture of those countries, understanding just the simple processes of how do people get the prescriptions, how do people go to the doctor. A lot of countries, they can just go sit in an ER. They can just go to an ER and wait, and sometimes they can be waiting more than 2 days at the ER, depending on their level. And we hear about different things in different countries. That, a lot of things are done on the severity level of what your treatment is, and sometimes you're put on hold because people more severe are treated first, and then you have to wait. So there's a lot of different things going on, but expanding those initial contacts helps us learn the everyday life of those countries. Phase 3, meeting with the candidates, different government officials, people part of the ministry, people a part of the decision making or the medical boards and directors and doctors, getting all those meetings into place, and then investigating the aspects to advance. And then, first and foremost, after we finish all that, the number one thing we look at trying to achieve from all these phases is getting the boots on the ground, starting the implementation process of putting telemedicine there. And the investment opportunities may exist. That's some countries are a little different. The investment options for that are actually incredible. I mean, we've already hit those sides in a lot of countries to where countries would be looking to invest. The idea of creating the telemedicine infrastructure in other countries is not for us to run and maintain the telemedicine structure with the government or with whoever's implementing that on a country level. The idea is to create that for them and really pass the reins over to them. Medicus Global will produce and help and make that possibility happen and change the entire country on how it does healthcare, and then give those reins over to the government and let them run that on their own through their particular systems. And then we continue the relationship marketing side and developing what Medicus Global does as well. So that's usually, based on information that we have, is anywhere between a 3 to 5 year process on developing it, because we don't just create it and start it working and then walk away. We create it, start it working, and make it consistent. And we add the changes in the programming and altering the creation of the websites and the language translations and training the physicians and training the call centers, because everything is done inside that country. We're not doing it from the U.S. Everything is made and branded to that country. So with that being said, there's a lot of investment opportunities there that may exist, and we're still learning more and more that things can happen. I mean, telemedicine is being discussed on a large level on a different thought process than what we are understanding on us. We look at telemedicine and the telehealth side of things as being access to physicians, but telemedicine is such a broad term that covers so much. I mean, just in Indonesia, I know there's a lot of conversations now in the telemedicine side, but they're more on the side of telemedicine, telecardiology, to where the actual cardiologist doesn't have to be physically in the room or at the hospital where the tests are being done on the heart. This physician can be in another island through a telecommunication type device that will be able to view and understand and make diagnosis and things without actually being on site. That's telemedicine as well. So when we're researching and trying to see, telemedicine, and sometimes people say, oh, well, they have telemedicine going on in Indonesia. Well, that is a little different than the actual everyday life of access to physicians for your routine type things. That's something that the telemedicine term is still used, and we also like to use the word telehealth because that's what we are promoting, is the telehealth aspect, the everyday access, the promotion of wellness, the immediate access to physicians that allows you to get the medications that are lower scale medications, non-DEA controlled substances, no narcotics, anything like that, get you on antibiotics and get you healthier faster, so that you can do away with having to be in the hospital where you're costing tons of money for something that may have been prevented if you had access to physician immediately. So that's kind of the idea of what we're looking at with this screen. And I know we're getting a little bit past about 35 minutes on this call, and one thing I've been doing all this week is being respectful for everyone's time and just getting the general overlays and understanding kind of what we're doing. So I hope with that being said, you kind of understand a lot on what we're doing here. There's a huge picture here that's being developed, and it's not something that happens quickly. But I just want the assurance from everyone, the reassurance really, that it is incredibly working and pieces are falling into place so quickly. And as fast as we can get things done, as fast as we can get things moved, I mean, I can tell you all of our team members, associates that are working with different projects, leaders that are working with different projects, contacts and government officials, everyone is working very, very quickly, because it's not a question of if other groups want this. It's just getting everything together to make it fit. There is a massive investment side of this that lots of dollars have to be spent to create this, and the assurance and the data and the pilot programs and everything that we're doing is all a part of making that process move a lot quicker. So I hope that makes sense to everyone, and I know there's probably a lot of questions. Just know that we're going to be doing several of these calls, and the idea of this particular call today is to give that overview of what's going on in the world today and kind of the thought process and the procedure and the policy side of what we're doing to implement this into each country. All the information that you received today is something that's been talked about nonstop over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, prior to a lot of people with Medicus Global becoming involved with Medicus Global. There were, the international expansion thought process and business overlay was all put together prior to the actual relationship marketing side starting. So this has been something that's been a main focus, and again, it will benefit so many, and special thanks to everyone who's been involved with that and the continued people that come on board with that. So with that being said, Norman, I'll bring you on real quick and we'll do some closings here.
Excellent, Stephen. Thank you. Yeah, just also crossed my mind. You have talked to me about, and I'm not sort of trying to open this door now, I'm just making this comment for everybody listening, but the actual cost saving to everybody that touches this industry through us, and whether it's a state in the U.S., like the 2 states that you're currently actively working with, it could be just the government, the country itself, the massive savings that telemedicine can bring to them for wasted money on ERs and all this kind of stuff. That was just another quick comment I wanted to make in closing this up, but Medicus opened the international doors. The company, our organization, the associates, we were responsible for opening these international doors, probably with the exception of well, actually, Poland too came from an associate, and I think certainly we know that Jamaica came from one of our associates. Contacts initially came out of our global team, or about the associates. That's where all these contacts have come from. So really, the Medicus Global, relationship marketing business is what created all of this. Now, our global expansion will be what protects what we've built, what protects our associate base, and just the success and the finances and all the things that will come through this will make us impenetrable, in my opinion. And so with that, I want to thank you, Stephen, first of all, for my involvement and my ability to work with you in this. I'm so happy to serve this cause. It is the biggest thing that I've ever considered doing in my entire life, and I hope everybody else will see the power of this and take whatever action each of you can and spread the word and just help us get this thing up and rolling. So again, Stephen, I want to just close it off to you to say goodbye to everybody, and thanks everybody for being here today.
Absolutely, and thank you, Norman, and a lot of the same comments I'll make, ladies and gentlemen. And first, thank you for coming to this call, or thank you for taking the time to listen to this recording. I know this is a big conversation, and a lot of people are watching and seeing what is going on here and what are we doing, just focusing on the international expansion. There's so many different opportunity sides with Medicus Global, and one of the big ones are the international expansion. So with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to be on this call, to take time to listen with this, and I appreciate everything, and we'll continue the updates on a regular basis on letting you know what's going on in the international world as we bring things on board and as data becomes available, as things come, so you can see and be a part of that process. And when you're relaying information to other people in the Medicus Global family or outside of that, maybe in other countries or contacts that you may be speaking to, you have all accurate information that if calls are set up, everything is duplicated, and your credibility is done a lot more, and your education level on the international expansion side is a lot better. So with that being said, everyone, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. And just a quick shout out to Ron and the rest of the corporate team. I know, Ron, you keep this room running smoothly, and thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.